Welcome back to Pillow Talk Sessions. I'm Kristian Lupinski and joined as always by my co-host Jessica Gillingham.
Thanks, Kristian. And today we're joined by Bart Sasim, who is the CEO and founder of Spatial Experience. We're going to be chatting to Bart about student housing and how PBSA is shaping the rental living sector and his views on what PBSA 3.0 is.
We'll also dive into the shifting tenant expectations, the balance between amenities and affordability, and how technology is kind of redefining the modern rental experiences.
Bart, thank you so much for coming on Pillow Talk Sessions. We're really pleased to have you as a guest, and I can't wait for this conversation. But before we sort of get into the nuts and bolts, would you like to sort of introduce yourself, what you're doing, and let our audience know a little bit more about you?
Sure, absolutely fine. Thank you so much. Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much, Jessica and Kristian, for inviting me here. Pleasure to be here and sharing some of the insights that might be useful for others. And I'm very curious to dive into these different avenues on PBSA and other topics. A little bit about me. Well, I describe myself as a creative strategist. My educational background is actually in interior architecture and retail design. Initially, I educated in UK, and then I moved on to based in the Netherlands, where then I started my professional career. I would say I'm quite interdisciplinary person. So with my company, it's called Spatial Experience. I'm a CEO and founder. The company started in 2012. We've been working on the intersection of research, design, technology, but also branding and marketing for the last 12 years, with the first clients being the student hotel, so in hybrid hospitality, PBSA, through the class and other clients that I'm very happy to talk a bit about later. But overall, I would describe myself as a kind of an architect or interior architect turned an entrepreneur, to put it simple.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that we'll give a lot of context to what we're talking about today, as I think we should just jump straight in. You mentioned, student living and things like this. I think this should be one of the first topics we cover because, today as students, when I was a student living was much different. But today, students' expectations, have this high level service and amenities in PBSA. So how do you think these expectations, as they're leaving student accommodation and moving over to rental housing, how should this industry respond to meet these elevated demands of, these former students now moving into this industry?
Wow, that's a nice question. I actually heard one of the talks previously with Ben. So starting from basically plug and play, right? That's what students are talking about. And Ben from Loft was talking about fully furnished concepts. So I'm not going to add much more about this, but on the top of this, definitely when it comes to the shifts, in PBSA, Kristian, I think we're in the same age. So experience the same type of, let's say, student housing 1.0, HMO, this kind of PRS, very improvised, not really professionalized. I think in US you might have had a little bit better version. In UK, in my times, when I was starting my studies in 2006, there were really nice PBSA, let's say, first schemes, but I was not lucky to get into them. So there was basically maybe too much of a demand for such a product. So I was not lucky to live in them. I was living in HMO. So having this fully furnished concept where you can actually move in and start studying and enjoying student life instead of looking for furniture and basically doing everything that you're not supposed to do, instead of focusing and diving into studies and study student life. That's something that definitely is a little bit different. So having fully furnished apartment and all inclusive bills, that definitely helps you to gain time. And I think time is very, very important, So that's the first two elements I would say when it comes to the shifts and the development in PBSA and student housing overall. Nowadays, I think expect more. I think it also comes with evolution of a little bit of I would say consumptionism, when it comes to when you look at every single part of our lives, whether it is technology, gadgets, the phones that we are using. We've been using phones that were not even smartphones back then, and the kids are already using smartphones when they go to primary school or a secondary school, whatever. So the same expectations, are probably then shifting towards other parts of life, other avenues, and being this also the housing. And housing is very important. So in that particular matter, the amenities that will allow those students to thrive, they also evolve. When students are getting accustomed to this, that's what they're going to expect in the next chapter of their life, right? Whether it is going to be at BTR level, and going to BTR scheme, or co-living, or any other urban living, or wherever they would like to go, while still maintaining the, let's say, the renter profile. They would expect the same amenities, facilities, but also this fully furnished plug-and-play offer is, I think, is very, very important in that respect. So with students, like if you ask what is the student life, I think everybody has got similar memories in common: events, parties, this movie nights, cooking nights. This is very, very important. So programming of the space will, I think, remain very, very important. And there's like different, I think, the different community focus, but like also user or resident initiated or community initiated events are going to become more and more open. So I think PBSA, in the beginning, I think it was really like a top-down kind of approach. And now I think with this new generation of Gen Zs and Alpha, according to studies, that's more, self-conscious. They will demand, for PBSA to be a bit more of a, let's say, facilitation of their life, making it easier, making it smoother, So the flexibility needs to be also taken into account, whether it is flexibility in terms of space. So maybe having some spaces that have got multi-functions, that might be very, very important. But also the flexibility when it comes to the leases, and because people do tend to change, obviously, after COVID. This whole notion of studies has changed, and we are finding ourselves in a completely different the world after pandemic. This flexibility needs to be also accounted, not only obviously with short, mid, and long-term leases and this space arrangements, but also in terms of like program, to allow for these different activities to take place, not only boring, same old.
Bart, there's so much to unpack in what you've said there, but I just want to say a couple of things. When I was a student, I lived in an HMO that was called the Bowl. And it was called the Bowl because it had a toilet seat outside the front door. And it was kind of the party house of the street that it was on. So it's like a very different, and I think it should have been knocked down, like it was not. But that wasn't maybe so much the landlords. I think it was us tenants in it that probably should have been knocked down. But another thing, I have a child in first year of university, and I have another one going very soon. So I am paying for PBSA right now. I am a customer. I mean, not living in it myself, but I am a customer. So it is a very, it's a really, and a lot of, it's a really interesting topic, the PBSA, and how it's changed, and how the expectations have changed and how the quality has changed over the years. But something that I would love to talk to you about is how home, and you have sort of touched on it a bit, about how the pandemic changed how we kind of experience where we live. But how has the definition of home changed for younger generations, and how does that kind of impact where they live and the provision that's provided to them?
It's a very good question, because definition of home, obviously it's a big discussion, a long discussion, and I think it does evolve. Actually, you're right, Jessica. It does evolve with time. I mean, for me, when you ask about home, let's start from there. Maybe it always evolves about like, where do you belong? Where you feel this sense of belonging. It does evolve a little bit to this, like I would say, home becomes a little bit of a hub. Like this. It's not necessarily fixed with location. Like for me, it was not fixed with location. Some of my best friends stayed back home, and they started families. For them, home is a single city. And obviously, it's a bit more traditional. But I met so many people along my journey that I think this home as a, this hub, home as a hub, that is constantly evolving. This notion is becoming, I think, more and more common, especially with people who are curious about the world. And there is more and more people becoming curious about the world. So they travel, they go actually to study as an experience, not necessarily for education, right? I think also when it comes to home, there's two aspects of home. Sometimes you can mention like home in the context of house, like the physical space, but also in this like a bit non-physical space. So when it comes to like community, for example, over space, the importance of belonging, what I mentioned about, and the importance of community instead of like having actually a space is basically that's something that definitely will gain on importance in the coming years, and it already does. So prioritizing the social interactions over like large spaces. People like to have this add-ons, to life, live the life to the maximum. I think, especially in this period of life studies, this is the moment that you can embrace the most. So every single moment counts actually. So you, Jessica, as a mom that provides this PBSA experience, you definitely give more moments to your children than if they were supposed to sort out their own furniture and everything else. They would lose time. That's something. It's 21st century. Obviously, would be nicer to have everything done. But this doesn't come for everybody, because obviously it comes with a price tag. But I think with more supply of PBSA and different types, because I'm big believer that we professionals also on this talk, we should create different options, and should speak about creating different options, not only the premium but also like a mid-range pricing and also budget, But I truly think that it will evolve at some point, and it does already, into like some kind of subscription-based living. I've been writing about this already for quite some time. I truly think that it would be great that we do have this notion of home, that you can actually choose, pick and choose what you want at home at this particular moment in your life, right? Because I think people go through different stages in life, and it's not only about like this obvious stages, like you're a student, you're a young professional, then you work, you maybe start family, and then you're becoming like, let's say, active senior, and then you're like, you need to be supported, I think that's something that is not that fluid, anymore, and people find themselves in.
You made it sound like a very quick journey, that as well.
Yeah,
to
yeah,
the needing care bit. But anyway.
Yeah. So I think this is good. We can talk about it later, but I think this is very important. And maybe last point, the home is also something that needs to be sustainable, like not only like in terms of like eco-friendly, like social impact, but also something that is sustainable also financially, that can allow people to have this comfort of being able to spend money somewhere else than just the basis, in a Maslow or the new Maslow pyramid. It's, I think, very important to pay attention to this, because at some point we might actually go over the border, and I think we are tending to lean towards like a pretty bad situation right now with the cost of housing and unsustainable financial modeling of this housing that does not necessarily meet the market demand, and we can see that it's widening. The gap is widening currently. So that's what I would say.
And that's a good segue into the next topic, is because we're talking about affordability. As these students are kind of shifting into these new kind of rentals and clients for these, build to rent or co-living, they have this expectation of, this is what we came from, and now we're going to this. The affordability is a big concern, whether it's inflation, what's happening in our lives, and this expectation going into these new rental units. How can these operators find the right balance between offering these attractive amenities that they expect, but also, managing their costs as well as the costs of, the renter? How can these operators balance these things?
Diversification. To put it simple, I would say, like when you think about it, I think from my times at UK, I remember Asda, or some other supermarkets, they did have this different ranges of products. Obviously, premium products, some of the products would be also produced by them. I think making amenities tiered, not everybody needs everything, right? So like even looking at let's imagine Jessica is an investor, a developer, and Kristian, you are an operator. Both of you want to do some business in PBSA, and then you look at this market of London or Manchester, any other big UK city, or maybe even Amsterdam and Rotterdam, or whatever, Paris and Lyon, primary and secondary cities. When you look at those cities, having the same product everywhere, so copy and paste, I don't think it's a smart strategy anymore. Why? This is my observation, obviously. Like there might be some people who do not agree, because essentially you do not really have you don't really give people choice, right? I mean, with this different amenities, facilities being all packed up, to a premium state, then you might not be able to tap into wider demographic. It's just specific demographic, and at some point when there is like high penetration of the market, then you've got then this premium PBSAs competing against each other, right? Whereas you've got on the other side this, like, let's say, student halls. And I've been staying myself out of curiosity the other day at LSE scheme at, was it Camden? I was there somewhere on a conference. I really was curious, how do this operate, and I was staying there. And it was a really great experience, like quite good rooms, not super fancy, like it could have been obviously better, but they did serve also like breakfast, it felt like kind of a hostel type, but you were staying at the PBSA scheme. And I could see that also students staying there, and they're absolutely fine with that, not paying, the premium price, and this was kind of, I would say, mid-range, maybe budget, and I felt like, wow, there are these really nice options that they don't have to be too expensive. You don't have maybe as many facilities and amenities, but then, people can actually opt in.
Yeah, it's a really interesting concept, that opting in or opting out, and depending on what's being offered, whether it's an additional cost to the user or an additional cost to the operator. And I'm writing a book right now. It's coming out in the summer, and it's about hospitality technology. It's about tech-enabled hospitality. And in the book, I've interviewed a number of operators across hospitality. And one of the operators that I interviewed is an Icelandic hotel chain. And they have, using technology, they gave the option to their guests to actually opt into cleaning. Not opt out, but opt in to cleaning.
Perfect.
And they found, and I can't remember what the exact figures are, but, a huge amount of them said, what, we don't need the cleaning. We don't want to be disturbed. It doesn't make any impact on us. We don't need it. So, of course, that saved resources for the hotel, and it didn't have any negative impact on reviews, because it was meeting those guests where they were. And instead of just assuming they want cleaning every day or whatever, it was, you have to opt into it. And I think it does feel like that's a lot of the future, isn't it? And I'd really love to hear more of because you mentioned about subscription living. Yep. And that's something I'm really interested in as well. And it's sort of a little bit like that, isn't it? It's like, this is you can choose what you want, basically.
Yeah, I think this is really about really understanding, like Jessica, you mentioned about it. Probably there was some kind of feedback there from the users, right, of the hotel. I myself also do not like to have the room cleaned, but I've got the feeling that the business tend to be or want to be as usual. It's easier to copy and paste different models and just try to make it for new location, but rather than go back to the user, even after 10 years of being in business, go back to user, actually ask them what do you need actually currently, and try to adopt, because that's going to be a challenge. But I think these days, whether Jessica, investor, developer, or Kristian, an operator, whether either of you wants or doesn't want, you really need to look at where does it go to, and with this new generation, so millennials already steered a bit, with this experience economy. Gen Zs are, steering even more with this self-consciousness and actually questioning many times how do we want to live, and I think, if you do not go back to user and ask them would you like to have this or that, then you're gonna be quite surprised when people are going to basically opting out from you totally, because you're not flexible enough. So this subscription living, coming back to the subscription living, I think, Jessica, what is very interesting is subscription is that you basically can always upgrade or downgrade, right? And I think this is very important. Sometimes you've got this like down moments, meaning like down on time, because you are studying, for example, for your exams, and you would like your space to be cleaned, but you don't want to have it a whole year, and you don't want to actually commit for the whole year. You're just like having a hard time, and you've got more to do. And why you shouldn't have an option to do that, and then the operator or like even partners, it could be external partners, right, that come and clean the space, or help you organize a party because you're busy around and you want to organize your birthday party, so, like supply some drinks, whatever, for friends to come together, etc. I think those services should be as add-ons, and I think this can really accelerate the PBSA to another level. And obviously the whole rental sector, I think this is something that pandemic also showed and surfaced, that this on-demand services, of like home delivery, of even basic goods, of additional services is of need in this times, of like pandemic, etc. It's the context, like that PBSA is not only like the island, and students nowadays. Like I talk many times to my sister because I'm curious, this like I already got detached by, I was studying like in 2006, 2009. So that was like 15 years odd years ago. And I've got now my younger sister studying. So I really want to understand, how people approach this. And I hear from her that, well, it's not only her, but people do not party as crazy, anymore, at least here in like, maybe it's her domain or maybe her department. But they like to do more stuff that that is a little bit more conscious, so they do conscious buying, conscious experiencing of the spaces, like wellness is more important, for them, and essentially they do not drink that much of alcohol, so the whole notion of the pub changes, but they would definitely like to rent some space to do something even crazy, with their friends, whether it is, karaoke, or it is a film night or whatever. What do you actually need when it comes to this? Even as a student, you need a space, chairs, the projector and sound system. And on this, you can do yoga, you can do a lot of things. Movie night, you can do karaoke night, you can do everything. But like furnishing, or like having this like smart furnishing approaches, I think that's something that will definitely change in the future, like being able to adapt the space a bit quicker, so with the furniture that can move in quickly, move out quickly, and that the space itself adapts, according to the needs of today, not in 5 years when the turnover of the FF&E budget, and the capex opex game is going to make sense. I don't think this is the same anymore.
So let's, you mentioned it briefly in this last answer, and I think we should talk a little bit deeper on it. As these younger generations, as you mentioned, are valuing experiences, more so over possessions. How should these rental operators, listen to these young renters? How should they, build a place that is, truly resonates with this experience-driven mindset?
It always, I think, once again, design. When you ask me, I immediately say design thinking. Really, once again, going to the end users and asking them questions, right? Like when you realize how detached we are right now when it comes to actually customization and personalization of the space, from actually where demand is, and where the product is, and right now what we talk today on, in case we take it to to the authorities, we want to get planning, we get it built, 2-3 years, whatever, maybe with modular systems quicker, it still is the talk of the future. So when thinking today and when speaking today, we need to think like, okay, what is going to be the near future, but obviously not overdo it, because we tend to overdo it, we as industry sector professionals, and we tend to overthink it without actually checking with the end customers, and actually even thinking, okay, what if if there is going to be, if there's going to be shift, that there's going to be less students because the students are going to start working quicker. You're going to have a little bit different, let's say, life patterns. We need to adapt this PBSA student housing to more of a kind of co-living, BTR, urban living schemes, whatever else. I think we need to start understanding this right now. So I think customization and personalization, you don't have to customize it for everybody, but what I've been talking about, opting in and opting out, and using the lodging system and using the data that is out there. There's a lot of great surveys. I think in UK you've got especially like the biggest amount, I think, of all type of surveys. So you can use data and define these different logics, to define to understand the different logics, and understand different data to define these spaces, so to turn it into more like of a kind of spatial product, key performance indicators, so like spatial product, and spatial, like, spatial experience performance indicators that they're gonna perform differently in the future than they used to, because like this whole notion of use, the utilization of the space changes, So I think this is very important. And also, Kristian, to your question, I think the hospitality inspired living, this whole notion of like having on-site team already, not anymore only concierge, but community managers, and having this human touch mixed with like smart technology that Jessica did mention about is a key, of the future product, And once again, I would question how are we going to be working in the future, which will define, the way that we live, so this like hybrid work living spaces in terms of students as well, because as I mentioned, I've got the feeling that the universities are moving back in, or let's say studying is moving back into PBSA schemes more than they used to when I was a student. At least that's my observation, obviously. And maybe this whole like partnership ecosystem that could stimulate the economy better. I think opening up the business for other businesses, to also tap into. I think that's something that would definitely benefit all of us and make it more sustainable, economically and and also ecologically. And there is going to be definitely a great social impact thanks to that, new jobs, and that's something that we actually need these days in this silent crisis. I've got the feeling that we need to cut down on some expenses, and stacking up additional expenses without giving people choice whether they would like to pay for this. I think this drives us to pretty much wrong avenue. There might be a little bit of a crisis, and actually a discounting of those schemes in the future, on the transactional level. I don't think, maintaining the business as usual will continue for a while, but there's going to be a moment that this product might become a bit toxic, which I really wouldn't like to see, because it's a great sector that could evolve, but this requires a bit more flexibility and thinking over this.
So that sort of brings us into as it evolves, and I know you've talked about the PBSA 3.0 version. How does it evolve to that? Do you want to tell us a little bit more of your thoughts on that?
Let me just turn this question, so don't make yourself comfortable, please. You're an investor and you're a developer, and Kristian, you're an operator. I already did introduce it, so let's turn this around. I'm going to share my thoughts, of course, but I would like to actually turn this question around. And you, Jessica, ladies first. You go. How do you think this PBSA 3.0 is going to be? You've got experience, first-hand experience with your children. So what is missing, do you think, and where do you think it's going to go from the investor and developer's perspective? So touch upon experience as well, but also the product. What do they like? What do they not like?
Yeah, it's very difficult for me to do it with the hat of an investor or a developer on, because I've never been either. But I have been a user, and I do work with lots of companies that are operators or tech companies, within the space. And I think we're in a really interesting point culturally, societally, in terms of change is happening very kind of rapidly. And I think that the expectations, and particularly, what did we say over the COVID time? The advancements that might have taken, 10 years took a year, certain adoption of lifestyle changes, technology adoptions, etc. And that's even quicker now. So I think that in terms of all the living sectors, from PBSA right up, and as you sort of said earlier, up to the, when we get to the point where we need something different in our lives, a bit more care, etc. I think that what we are looking at, it's one of the things that we're really interested in talking about on this podcast, is around how a service experiential, and you've talked about it, on here, but a service experiential element, wave, perspective, paradigm, or whatever you want to call it, is over everything. And as consumers, that's what we're expecting. We're expecting service alongside whatever product it is that we're getting. We're expecting, how does it feel to be a buyer of this thing as a user of this thing? So I think that even from student accommodation, so even in the cheapest kind of, university digs that you might have, to the high end build to rent, that sort of, how does it feel? What's the experience as a consumer of this product? And I think that it's taking those principles from hospitality, from service, which haven't traditionally been there. Traditionally, here's your unit, here's your key, get on with it. We don't want to know how you feel in there, or how you feel about your buyer's journey, or how you feel about our brand, or how loyal you are. We just, here's your unit, basically. So I think that is a big change that we're seeing, and it just feeds into culturally all other aspects of life as well. So those are my views.
How about you, Kristian? Like you come from hospitality.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really good point, Jessica. But, since we've had these conversations in this series, we've talked to a lot of different people from different, parts of this industry. So ultimately, having a good structure there that is easily adaptable. We talked to Citizen M and how they build, modular units and things like this, that they can adapt to all their different buildings. They can have it built in one place, but they're also easily interchangeable. If you want to pull out units and make a bigger space, you have the opportunity to do that. There's things like technology. Another thing that I would say is, be careful what you lock yourself into, because this technology can change so fast. And if you have a legacy system that can only run certain things, and you have doorknobs that only work on a certain app and that can't be changed, you have to change those if something doesn't work out in the end. So, being, fluid with the technology used, but don't lock yourself down in a certain thing because of how fast things change. So anyway, those are my 2 cents, but you're the one who's in the sector. We're the ones doing the interview. So I would like to hear your PBSA 3.0.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. Thank you very much. But it's good to hear from you, right? You interview so many people. You are very smart in these topics. So I'm very curious to pull your tongue as well. I think, Kristian, picking up maybe on what you just mentioned about technology, I think this balance of technological and human interaction is going to be very important in the future, so like building seamless digital services, but still having the human touch, because you don't want to end up with like AI robots talking to you when you actually want to talk to somebody human on either premises is a key. Obviously adapting technology even to the way that there is somebody else, human, on the other side, but connecting with you remotely is already, like, I think this kind of middle point, where you know that there is somebody sitting in a central office and can open a door or a locker, like, let's say, parcel box, or help you with anything else you might have problem with in the evening, for example, right, or whatever. But I think when it comes to also, when we talk about sustainability, right, and this like, ESG aspect, ecological, social aspect, we need to be able to measure, right, where we can actually implement certain features better and, others, let's say, dim them down. When it comes to IoT, for example, sensors, the use of space, what I've been talking about, how much people actually use the space, even using like temporary sensors to map the interactions between people, to design better arrangements, layouts. That's where technology can help us, and IoT, for example, measuring the consumption of water, or smart heating systems, not to and not to overdo, let's say, when it comes to energy consumption, because like that sometimes it's overheating, rooms is common, and that increases costs, that in the end of the day people need to pay for, and that doesn't do well, for economy, because it doesn't generate any additional value. It's just like a burnt money, and it doesn't really add to the experience, and whether these people on the other side of this, of the screen who are paying for it, let's say Jessica, putting her bank account against against those non-utilized let's say Celsius or Fahrenheit, whatever degrees that are up in the room. I don't think that's any well for us. But I think when it comes to the social interactions as well, like understanding how much people actually not only use the space, but like how do they circulate in the space. So I've been hearing like interesting insights and technologies that were alerting when it comes to the mental health, alerting operators that somebody is staying in the room for too long, right? So something that might be then helping us with predicting whether somebody is having any problems, anxieties, depression, and whether we can help them. Just give them a call and ask like, hey, are you doing well? Like don't be too sad if you didn't pass the exams, it's the life goes on, whatever, some kind of support that these people are like, they're also human beings. Yes, there are residents, there are customers, but they don't want to be treated only as the customers. They would like to be treated as, one of the people that are part of the building, part of the community, and they can't always reach out to somebody else. And so being reached out to them, and having this kind of indicators coming from technology, I think this is something that is very, very, very important. And in general, balancing, automation and human touch is going to be the domain of PBSA of the future. I think if we want to drop down the costs, we can't expect everything to be done on a human level, but we can utilize AI, and other type of automations, and integrate different solutions for the benefit of, the pricing, and also saving human time. People don't have to do this kind of, I call it monkey job, it doesn't have to be done by humans. Really, we've got this face-to-face interactions to do in front of people. That's what people can pay for, and people never mind paying for others people's time, because they relate. They understand that everything takes time, everything takes care, and I think this human touch is very, very important, and this data-driven, I think what I did mention, and sometimes it sounds cliche, okay, how to customize and personalize. Well, you can do it with the use of technology. If you really like make your strategy being data-driven personalization, then you run these surveys. You try to understand who your customers are and how do they use your product. What do they think about it? Not get too spastic about negative feedback. Just get on and get this product to a better state. With the use of different factors, and students, parents, professors being the stakeholders, because in the end of the day, it is not only Jessica, it's not only her daughter, her son, anybody, in the family that is involved in this. It's also the university, and it's a greater society, that is going to benefit from this improvement. So we need to, I think, balance this very well. But this is on technology level. To answer your question on a space level, I think I did already indicate it. I'm going to just repeat it. To sum this up, is going to be very much about adapting the space properly and wisely. And when it comes to experience and service level, I think, and also coming back to the space, it's very important to leave certain spaces to be a bit more adaptable and a bit more multifunctional. And when it comes to the services, actually, again, rethinking the service stack and rethinking actually the level of community interactions, user community interaction, so like an individual with a group, individual with individual, looking into these different moments that you can create for those people, not only this, let's say, group moments where some people who are extroverts might not be part of or want to be part of, but this more like intimate interactions. And and also different communities, or groups within your schemes, are having different needs. There is going to be a group of people who want to cook together, and they don't want to go to party. They want to rather experience, Master Chef kind of experience. And others would like to go to party, but pre-start the party at the PBSA. They don't want to go to the pub, They would like to just have like their own cocktail session, and drink something nice, and then go to party further. I think pre-drinking, this whole concept of pre-drinking,
long gone,
long gone. And I think these days, like people are looking for other options of new pre-drinking, but they don't always have the space because they cannot host everybody in their tiny rooms, So I think there is different avenues, and we will definitely need to see it a little bit less, copy-paste kind of shoebox model, more personalized, maybe even looking into like different clustering of spaces or changing, the typology of the buildings, making these buildings a bit more mixed use. And even I think I would say the PBSA is going to evolve. The PBSA 3.0 is going to go more towards like, let's say, co-living, BTR, urban living. I truly think that the future is a little bit more blended and should be blended, because then we also do not lose too much on this like knowledge transfer. I think that's what is very, very important, that we tend to have this like different periods of life and stick to these phases in life, instead of like actually managing to learn from each other and actually mixing students even with seniors, like this gap, is going to, like, instead of widening up and having these problems, intra generations, we can actually bridge it, and generate more benefit, more profit for society overall.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting, because that's probably, how it always has been up until the last maybe 100 years, 50 years or whatever. We're just going back to where it was. But on that note, Bart, thank you so much for joining us. It's been really great having you and learning. I've learned so much about PBSA on today's show. But just as we wrap up, is there anything that you want to add, anything coming up for you that you want to tell the audience about?
So probably talking about what is coming up in the next couple of months and this year, I would say the Northern Star for us is Co-Living Conference. We're going to have actually Co-Living Conference and Co-Living Awards. The 5th Co-Living Awards, where we actually have a category called Student Co-Living. It's quite provocative, I would say, name. Is this about PBSA, about co-living? We tend to think about like really community-focused student living that embraces impact. So I think for those who are in PBSA, looking into who participates there is quite interesting. And that's going to be in October 15th, 16th. And we are also having a lot of conversations running around convergence of different sectors. And that's going to be in Barcelona, but we will also stream it. A part of this, we are launching, and we are very active with Co-Living Insights. It's basically a media and business intelligence platform where we also have webinars. We talk about different topics spanning, across during development, post-development, investment, development, operations, scale up. So I think just maybe a little bit different demographics, not only looking into students, but also like into young professionals, starter families, single parents, and even seniors. That's something that is on the horizon.
So Bart, I just want to say again, it's been an interesting conversation. I think this conversation can go on for many, many more hours.
Thank you.
But we'll save those many more hours for the future. But again, it's been a pleasure to have you on today.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you very much, Kristian. Thank you very much, Jessica. And I hope to see you in person sometime soon.
Great. Thank you, Bart.
And that wraps it up for us today. So thank you guys so much for joining us on this episode of Pillow Talk Sessions. To stay connected and catch every new episode, do us a favor and head over to pillowtalksessions.com to subscribe. And be sure to follow us on LinkedIn for more insights and interviews with leaders who are shaping the future of hospitality, multifamily living, and community-driven spaces. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on Pillow Talk Sessions.